evening.
Welcome, everyone, to the very first live episode of Spooky 101. It is my pleasure today to have as our first guests the legendary radio voice of not only Boston, but New England, Mr. Kevin Barbare. Kevin, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. And then we also have one of the people who helped bring you Spooky World in the 90s. And also an accomplished actor and musician, Mr. Corey Tourigny. How are you today, Corey?
Great. Thank you, Anthony.
I should also add, he's a great writer.
Indeed, he is. Indeed, he is. And a
writer.
fellow Jaws fan as well. We've had many a conversation on that.
Absolutely.
There's some stuff you folks hopefully will see someday because of that. Keep your fingers crossed. So I wanted to ask you guys today, we're taking this walk down memory lane for the movie. And I really appreciate you taking some time out of your Sunday. And for the folks at home, I think it's halftime, so hopefully you're tuned in. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you first, let's start off with you, Kevin.
Yes.
Kevin, you were an instrumental part of Morning Drive in Boston, and you still are for years with WAAF. And you linked up with Spooky World in the 90s. Could you go over with us what your relationship was with Spooky World and some of the interesting, not just local level, but national level media attention that you and Spooky World brought to this iconic location?
I believe I met Dave for the first time the first year I was on the morning show at WAF, which would have been 1993. And he brought in several horror celebrities with him. He brought in Kane Hodder and Don Shanks and Doug Bradley and R.A. Mihailoff, who were, Pinhead, Jason, Leatherface, and Michael Myers. And we all, from different sequels, they're obviously different people, different sequels. And he really was a good salesman. I mean, he was like the P.T. Barnum of the horror theme park. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of anything like this outside of, local people doing little haunted houses or things for fun. It was a huge thing. And he was such a good promoter and good salesperson, and he was easy to talk to. And once I went to visit the place the first time, I thought it was a great idea that kept getting improved upon because he had a huge property with farmland and barns, and he was a collector of horror memorabilia, which I'd always been a big fan of. And my only experience with that kind of stuff was horror conventions. And the biggest thing I ever did with him involvement-wise is an appearance on the Today Show. He had makeup artist Tom Savini there one year, and Willard Scott came to town when he was still doing the weather on the Today Show, and they did a live cutaway from Spooky World. And they interviewed Dave about the place. They talked to Tom Savini, and the entire time in the background, one of Tom's makeup people was putting a wound on my face while they were talking. That was a pretty cool moment. I don't know if you have that footage, if it'll be in the movie, but it was really a lot of fun.
Well, we have some surprises for folks coming up in this film coming out, I believe this spring, according to the last we spoke with Quinn and David, which actually leads me to a bit of a surprise here, folks. We have a third guest coming on later today. Your patience is going to be rewarded with a brand new clip. Director Quinn Moynihan has just texted me and said that he wants to drop in. He has a surprise for all of us. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I've seen about half the film already, and boy, you folks are in for a treat. I am excited beyond belief. So, playing into that national media attention, it led into such famous folks as Tiny Tim getting married there. Did you folks tune into that back in the day?
Yes, I was there. Tiny came in the studio a couple of times when he was around. Corey actually, I think, had a lot more dealings with Tiny Tim than I did because he
Yeah,
worked there at the
I was
time.
actually there for the filming of it. I was walking around with Tiny that day, and that night, him and Bill Maher and what was her name, Miss Vicky?
That
Miss-
was
Yes.
correct.
That's
right.
her. Yeah.
So yeah, so it was probably about 4 or 5 of us that were a part of that segment. We were with Tiny Tim and Bill Maher as he was going through the park and going through the museum, and then he met Tiny at the end. I kind of talked in the movie about that experience and what I thought of Bill Maher that night. So I don't really want to go into it here. You can see it in the movie what I have to say about it. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool experience, though, being there for that.
We had you sweating a little bit in that chair because we really dug into Corey and just about every single guest that we had lined up for this film. Corey, could you tell us a little bit about your background at Spooky World briefly for folks? What exactly you did there?
Well, I was part of the creative team for a couple of years. I was a manager, hiring and doing that type of stuff. Just all around everything type of position. I started there just as a guy that was taking care of like the grounds, and then they moved up into a management position. And David was gracious enough to to say, yeah, okay, we'll give him a shot to to see what he can do, and it was great. We had a great time.
And people like me and Corey probably to be able to hang out a place like that all the time, we probably would have done 20 jobs if they asked us to, just because we wanted to be there. I wanted to be there every night that I could be, and because I worked so early in the morning, I could only make it like a couple of times a month.
So, Kevin, you had definitely a different perspective than most folks, being not somebody that worked there at the time, but you had an affiliation and were there quite a bit behind the scenes. The folks that worked there were some of the hardest working and most dedicated folks that I've ever interviewed in my life. And the passion that they had there keeps them in this business, in this industry, which plays into what you folks did. You were mentioning earlier that you attended a few conventions and then Spooky World came along. What did Spooky World do when it came to folks having access to celebrities and meeting those folks? Because I remember when I was a kid, I was 13 or 14 when I first went there. I had never heard of such ease of access to folks like Elvira or Kevin Barbare, things like, oh yeah, to Kevin Barbare, of course. You got to meet you too, but I met you at Rock and Shock, which we'll talk about later. We got to meet Kane Hodder and a few other celebrities there. The advertising for Spooky World was second to none, which is the reason why I never knew that I could have access to meet celebrities before Spooky World. Could you bring us into a little bit about what Spooky World did to up the game for meeting celebrities and how it helped affect and bring more folks to the convention scene from it?
Well, he was when he called it America's horror theme park, it really was, because you had other places that did a hayride, you had other places that did a haunted house. You didn't have any places that did haunted house, haunted house, haunted house, huge hayride, and had celebrities and had a merchandise, area, and all of those things in one place, I think made it different than it was. And live music. Sometimes there was live music. Um, the crowds at the time that it was at its peak were as big as something you would see outside of a Comic-Con today. And I think that definitely led to people coming up with the idea that there were more areas to do horror conventions. I know certainly for me, it was where was like, wow, we don't really have a horror con here in New England. And once Spooky World kind of moved from the area, it became more prevalent that something like that would do well here. So I think it was also something, like you said, you didn't realize you had access to meet people like that. And it was the first time I had met Linda Blair, I believe, and Adrienne Barbeau and Elvira were at Spooky World. So that was really cool for me to get to meet those people and then find out there were other conventions that could be done, and that people really wanted to get close to these people and take a picture with them and get their autograph and those kind of things.
So, Corey, you
Mhm.
had such a different view than most of us did. We were on the other side of the rope. You were behind the scenes. You were one of the people help facilitating, making sure that these celebrities and the stunts at Spooky World were done safely, and but brought to their peak potential. How much effort? How long was the process to bring these folks uh, an A+ entertainment venue? How long did it take for you guys to make these attractions over the course of a year?
Well, we would start probably say late February is where we would start with like the haunted houses, like the indoor haunts, and then we would go from February till the end of September when we opened up in the end of September. So I mean, it was every day, 10 hours a day, just doing this. So yeah, and we during the course of the year we would add more people to the crew to do more creating and more putting things together. But it really took 8, 9 months before we had everything where we wanted it to be.
Now, once October hit, Kevin just mentioned it. The crowds there were just incredible. I remember when I heard the first radio ad, I heard the jingle. That jingle just, I mean, if there was ever a holly jolly Christmas for Halloween, it was the Spooky World jingle, and it got you ready for October. I was ready to go. I was knocking on my uncle's door saying, "Hey, give me a ride. I want to go." And I remember sitting in that traffic, uh, getting
Around the
off of
Puerto Rico. Yeah.
495 and hitting 290. And I remember my uncle's reaction because he had no idea what the hell we were getting into.
Hmm.
Um, and all of a sudden, all we saw was a sea of red lights stuck on 290, getting ready to get off the Berlin off ramp.
Yep.
When you folks first saw the scope of this, when you first went there, what was your initial reaction? Did you deal with the same things that most of the public did with this traffic jams?
Well, I
When you
remember I remember being out in the back trail, and there was the berm that separated the two sides of the trail. So we would stand up on that berm and we would look out because you had a nice bird's eye view of the traffic that was coming in off the highway, the rotary, everywhere, and it was just like endless, like headlights stuck and parking in that field across the street.
Yeah,
And we
because there was no mall back then. There was
no,
nothing. You could
no,
just see everything.
right, exactly. So it was crazy.
For those who are familiar with the area, the Solomon Pond Mall ended up coming in what, 97, 98? Is that right?
Yeah, no, it was being built in '95 because it was being built in '95, and I think '96 is when it opened. Because I remember watching like all the construction that was happening. Because right from the driveway of Spooky, you could see right across in the distance where that was actually being built. And I want to say that was '95 that you could see it being built. And '96, I think, is when it actually opened, or vice versa. It could have been '96 when it was being built, but it was around that time.
So you have a mall being constructed. You
Mhm.
have a iconic horror theme park that the folks of Berlin must have just the adults were probably pulling their hair out and the kids were celebrating in that town because now not only did they have a incredibly brand new 90s era shopping mall to hang out at and get whatever sugary drinks they wanted to and maybe buy a video game, but now they had an iconic America's Horror theme park there. Corey, could you bring us in just a little bit into the window because we're going to address this in the film. What was it like with the locals? What was the impression of Spooky World with the locals?
Honestly, I think most of the locals thought it was pretty cool. I mean, we had most of the local kids were employees there. So I mean, I think the young kids that worked for us there really loved it, and they loved that time of year because we were there, and they got to hang out with their friends and make new friends. I mean, it was like 300 of us that at night, that worked there. So I think that the younger crowd definitely, the locals loved it. The older ones, I don't know. I don't know so much, but I know that there were some older locals that worked for us as well that loved it. So I don't know. I think it was kind of a mix of both.
And that was one of the things we're going to discuss in the film, that David actually went, put put his feet to the ground, knocked on every door, and tried to get the community involved in it. And it very much was a community-based presentation.
It was.
And that brings me to what you folks helped bring as well. You were part of a team that helped bring us Rock and Shock, a legendary convention in the not only Massachusetts but the country. Everybody used to call it their favorite little convention because it felt like a family affair when you went there. Um, and the reason that it caught my attention was because it was the first time that I had felt since I was at Spooky World in Berlin that this vibe when I walked in going, I have Kane Hodder here. I have Elvira here. I have all of these celebrities here. And the last time I felt like they're this easily accessible and not like on a pedestal was at Spooky World. Could you tell us how that may have influenced the creative process of bringing such a wonderful convention to our area? I'll start with Kevin.
Well, it kind of all started, like I said, with realizing there really wasn't one of its kind in New England, but then trying to do it in a way where I could use some of the clout of the radio station to have them initially try and back it, because they wanted each of us to do our own kind of event as members of the staff. So that was what I came up with, was a horror convention at day, and then in order to get the station involved, have rock concerts at night. And at first I reached out to actors that I already knew, and then after that I built a list of people that I would have always wanted to meet in one place. And from there we were able to, with the help of backing from a company that handled the concerts, who fronted the money for it, get the whole thing put together and gradually start to build an audience and everything. And yeah, it was, I mean, it is a family. I mean, the same people would come every year, and we tried to keep the same vendors unless we added some new ones. And our guests would always want to come back. I mean, the only advantage I think we had over Spooky World as far as the experience is they wouldn't have to be worried about getting rained on or being in the cold, because the weather wouldn't matter because we were inside. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I definitely was influenced by Spooky World and wanting something like that here, especially once Spooky World changed the way it was. So there was nothing like that in October anymore, because it was definitely a big difference between when it opened and when it moved.
Oh yeah.
So Corey, we're going to get into this in the film, but I wanted to ask you, when you heard that Spooky World was leaving Berlin, I know you know some inside baseball on a lot of this, but at the same time, what was your guttural reaction on that when it left Berlin?
It'll never be the same. Never be the same. Berlin was the location that was the heart and soul of the horror haunt industry right there. If they always say if there was a portal to hell or anything like that, that would have been the portal to hell. That's what it was. That was the first, and just the atmosphere, the overall whatever that location had in Berlin, it was magic. And David had it. And I don't care where you take it now, it'll never be the same. It'll never be the same.
Yeah. And that's what every other place that still exists that does stuff during October says, oh, we just want to try and be the next Spooky World, or we want to get the feeling that people had when they went to Spooky World. And people who are trying to start new ones, they say the same thing. We just want something like the old Spooky World.
What do you both think that what brought it all together? Because I always use the phrase, it was like lightning in a bottle. What do you think? Because people say something has the intangibles, that it's got this, it just had everything. And it was in the right era. It was in the right place. I mean, that location was incredible. Like, could you tell us what it was like when you first saw the location, Kevin? Because Corey, you were behind the scenes building. From the outsider's point of view, the wow factor, Kevin, when you first pulled up there, what was your first reactions?
I was really impressed with how many different things there were to do there. Now, my first experience when it was actually, open for business, I couldn't believe how many people showed up for it. And I was like, wow, he's going to make a fortune with this thing. This is a great idea. And then when I went on the hayride, which I think was the first thing I did, it really didn't disappoint. I mean, it had so many levels to it, and some of the things that he changed over the years. And it wasn't like a bunch of animatronic, like cheap things. You'd go through a graveyard and you'd have people coming out of the graveyard coming after you. And then you go to the end, and, you always have the guy with the chainsaw that scares everybody who chase you around. And the haunted houses were good too. I just don't remember as much about them because that hayride was so fantastic to me. I just really loved it. That was always the thing I wanted to do first, was the hayride. I remember they had the stage where if they had someone who did music, like Bobby Boris Pickett, who did the Monster Mash, or Tiny Tim, or Alice Cooper, that he would have them go out and, would they do a song, Corey, every hour, or was it for the people who were waiting in line?
Yeah, I think it was like, they shifted around like every 45 minutes to an hour or something like that. Usually we'd have to wake Bobby Boris, pick it up in the trailer because he'd be reading a book and he'd fall asleep drinking. So yeah, he was a good guy.
But so many people, we're a field full of hundreds or thousands of people sometimes waiting to get in, who would be entertained by the guys on stage doing things.
Well, that was a great idea to do. You have a stage out there, and then you got a bunch of people waiting in line. Nobody likes to wait in line for anything, but you know what? David gave them something to take their mind off it by having somebody famous, Bobby, out there singing his song, or Tiny singing his song. It's amazing. It was great idea.
Mm-hmm. As one of the people who were behind that rope and in that line, it was one of the places where, you remember what it was like, and I'm going to date myself here, folks, when you used to wait in line outside of a record store to get tickets for a concert. You used to be sitting there and talking to the people in line and getting to know them, and our faces weren't buried in our phones.
Right.
We were actually talking to people, getting to know where they're from, making friends, writing numbers on a piece of paper and say, hey, we just shared this experience, call us. SpookyWorld mastered that. The line there, you were entertained because they made sure that they had haunters going in and out of the lines. And the way they recruited people were, a lot of the times they recruited their people from showing up there. They'd pull them aside and say, hey, you want a gig? Corey, could you tell us a little bit about some of the unorthodox hiring practices that SpookyWorld utilized?
Well, basically we hired anybody that really had a desire to do this for work. It was more or less, if they really dreamed about doing something in the horror industry, or had a love for horror and they expressed it that way to us, we'd give them more of a shot than somebody was just saying, hey, I want to make $7.50 an hour to go out and scare the crap out of people. So it was basically, most of the people that worked there, it was a passion. I would have to say 95, 99% of the people that worked there, it was passion for them. They absolutely loved what they did. But sometimes we had people show up with things that, we couldn't do for them. They wanted to be hired. Like one guy wanted to bring in a Siberian tiger to have as an exhibit, so all of a sudden Dave's like, hey guys, come down to the front lawn. We got a guest showing up and he wants to bring his exhibit with him. I said, okay. So we go down to the front lawn and there's this giant Siberian tiger sitting there on just a chain. And it's like, are you kidding me? Who the hell goes to work and all of a sudden there's a damn Siberian tiger sitting on the front lawn?
Well, that's another documentary that was on Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. Anthony, seriously, that thing was huge. It was a beautiful creature, but it was huge. And it was like the guy had it on like a dog chain, basically. And there was like 6 of us standing around a damn tiger on a front lawn in Berlin. And it's like, what am I doing for work?
I mean, dog collars with tigers. What could go wrong, right?
Right.
breaking the fourth wall to another level. But the people made it. The folks like Corey, the haunters, the carpenters, the creative minds made it. But it also took a little icing on the cake, and that's going to bring me into. We have a surprise for you folks. We actually have our director Quinn Monahan, who has just joined our chat, and he actually has brought with him a clip today, a brand new clip. Corey's about to see it. Kevin's about to see it. I'm about to see it. So let's bring in Quinn. Quinn, you there?
Tony. Yeah. Hi, Tony. How are you?
Doing okay. Doing okay. Audio only today?
Audio only today.
Yeah, folks. He's in his lab currently editing. This man does not stop on this film. So I wanted to ask you, Quinn. You've been listening to what we've been discussing today. You just came in with an emergency text to me. What do we have to look forward to today?
Well, first, I want to say hi to Corey and Kevin. Kevin, I haven't met you, but Corey, I know well. Hi. We want to put some of these comments in our film.
Oh, great.
But I just want to say hello and tell you that we're releasing another clip today exclusively on the Spooky 101 podcast. And basically, what else did I want to say to you today? I wanted to make an impassioned plea, but I'll tell you what, let's play the clip first.
So, folks, we were talking earlier about how people find folks. And back in the 90s, we didn't have quite as easily a way to get a hold of the internet. So what David did to find a famous celebrity who was more local than we ever anticipated, we're about to show you. And we're about to show you. Folks are asking, we see Vincent Price all over your photos and how you're advertising them. We're about to show you how we incorporated Vincent Price into our storytelling. So check out this clip.
Let me just jump right in and just add one thing to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't start out with a lot of footage from back in the day. And so for that reason, there are many, many stories that David Bertolino tells that we just simply cannot illustrate with the footage that we have. So we came up with this idea of substituting David for Vincent Price. And it has worked out to great effect. And we'll let you guys be the judge. Take a look.
We'll let it speak for itself, folks. Here is an exclusive clip.
I'm rebuilding my exhibition from the ground up. I'm going to give the people what they want. Sensation, horror, shock. Send them out in the streets to tell their friends how wonderful it is to be scared to death.
Linda Blair was one of our earliest major celebrities.
Hi, Father.
Hello.
I always had a soft spot for Linda Blair.
You bastard!
I was an Exorcist movie lover.
Oh, I love you.
And Linda Blair was just phenomenal in The Exorcist.
Timmy, why you do this to me? Timmy, please. You're not my mother!
Had trouble finding her.
Why, Timmy?
But somebody did tell me that she was from Westport, Connecticut. And so I went to the town hall in Westport and I found an unpaid excise tax bill with her address on it.
You're gonna die up there.
And I wrote a letter, made a passion plea. We had this Halloween event, and it's homespun, family-friendly, celebrities coming there, great reviews. Apparently her mom opened the letter and called Linda up. Her mother convinced her and said, you really should do this. You're coming to visit me. Work at SpookyWorld.
She goes, take a chance. You've been here with me. You've been taking care of me. If you're not happy, it's not that far to come home.
She joined us. It was fantastic.
People looked at me very strange in the streets. Yeah. People were afraid of me.
There you have our latest clip from the movie. Quinn, thank you so much for dropping in and providing that for us today.
Yeah, I just want to say the reason that we decided to use lots of footage from Vincent Price films and other films. There's a lot of surprises. It's because we need footage. So if you've got it, we're still working on the film. If you have any footage that you shot at Spooky World, photographs, anything like that, please contact us here at, and or just go ahead and post it right to the website, and we'll take it from there.
I know I have some footage somewhere on some old video, if I still have a camera that works, of the hayride one year, of portions of the hayride.
We'd love to have it. We're piecing things together. For example, we're working on one of the attractions right now, the Savini Haunted House, and we're piecing together news footage and camcorder footage and photos to try to give people a sense of what it was like to go through the Tom Savini Haunted House. And so we need that stuff.
SpookyWorld movie. I'd like to thank Quinn for your time today. Thank you. I know you're going to get back into Frankenstein's lab and continue editing. Please send my best to Gail. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Will do. Thanks.
All right, folks. And Kevin, where can we find you nowadays? What are you up to? Please tell us what's going on in your world.
Well, while of the COVID-19 situation is still going on, I won't be doing anything with any conventions until that part is over. So otherwise, I just am available through my Facebook page, facebook.com/Kevin Barbare Official, or on Instagram, just Kevin Barbare, and Twitter. I'm there, all three of those.
I also wanted to ask, while I had you both here, there was a pretty big void left when Rock and Shock left us in its last entity.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've been working hard behind the scenes, and I know you folks want to recapture that spirit. So could you tell us, while it may not be a convention, or it may be something else that we may have discussed, what are you looking into now to bring the masses? Because I know you always have the fans in mind.
Yeah, I do want to do another convention, a bigger, better version of Rock and Shock. It would just be once you're able to not have to wear a mask when you go for a photo op anymore, when we don't have to worry about capacity limits, because I imagine the first HorrorCon back here in the area would be a big one, I would hope, and work on some bigger guests and bigger musical acts if we keep the musical aspect of it, which was what made us different from most others. And outside of that, there's some other things I can't really talk about because there's no definite works, but a couple of horror related things, and then convention related things that aren't necessarily horror cons. All of those, again, once this pandemic situation is over, instead of going a little bit backwards, we can do more with that. But it is going to come back in one form or another, and all the things that you liked about the convention will be there, but we'll add some more things we hope you like more.
I have no doubt that you will. You're always working, my friend. I really appreciate your efforts on this. Corey, where can we find you nowadays? I know you're always working with Kevin in some capacity, but what are you up to?
Just doing my music still, doing a lot of writing. Over the years, I've been doing, some horror movies here and there, acting in some horror movies. But, basically the past, I'd say the past year, I've been working more on writing than anything, TV show type writing, script writing, movies and series. But that and music, recording music constantly. And I see Kevin all the time. We're always hanging out. Me and him have been best buds for many, many years. And we met at Spooky World too, which is pretty cool. So
it brings people together. And you took that spirit of Spooky World. You helped insert a lot of that into Rock and Shock and future conventions. And I know that some of my lifelong friends I've met at Spooky World and through Rock and Shock. And I'd like to thank you both for helping to do that for me and many other people. And thank you both for your time today. I hope you had fun. Before we leave, what did you think of the clip?
Awesome.
Very well put together. I liked it. Dave's a little more approachable than Vincent Price in that clip, though, but it is the same. It is the same Carnival Barker attitude for sure.
Hopefully not the same ending. So, guys, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to everybody that tuned in today. Please forward this to any of your friends. Share alike. I know a lot of folks are football, baseball fans. So if they have a chance to watch this tonight, share the link. And for the folks who have been reaching out to us via our email, we are a very small project. We have a lot of emails over the past week. We received 30,000 views on our last post regarding our last filming schedule. And my hands are currently crumpling up from the amount of replies that I've been typing out. So we have done this weekend 25 pre-interviews. And if you haven't heard from me, you will hear from me in the coming days. So thank you for your patience. And if anybody has any footage, any photos, please. So for Kevin Barbare, for Corey Tourigny, I'm Anthony Landry. Thank you so much for joining us on our very first live episode of Spooky 101. Have a great day.
Good evening.